And we're live. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love First Christians Bible in 1 year. Nope, not Bible in 1 year daily reading. I'm so used to doing that. I do that 7 days a week. And then there's this one. This is the Bible study. I'm here with Aaron Goss. Aaron, my friend, how are you doing today?
Man, I am tired, but I'm going to power through.
I appreciate you making time. If you would like to rest.
No, I got it.
Okay, because I was like, I'll monologue for 2 hours if that's what I got to do. I mean, I don't want to force anything on you there, but I'm sorry you're tired. I appreciate you being here regardless. Let's go ahead and jump into some Bible stuff. And
I'm looking after my parents or my mother's dog. She's out of town, so the dog is running me ragged.
The dog is tough to take care of?
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. No, it's more of a puppy than a dog, although it's huge.
Well,
yeah,
that'll do. What kind of doggy is it?
I don't remember what kind of breed it is. It's a medium-sized dog, even though it's a puppy.
Okay.
And yeah, she's definitely got a lot of energy. So
okay, so it's one of the big dog varieties that is in little dog format. Okay, sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the reading here. I know you didn't get quite to all of it, so I will go ahead and start with one that I found critically important now. Not just in what we're reading, but I think it will kind of even preemptively answer a lot of the questions that you have, as well as a lot of the issues that I share with you as far as the Old Testament and the way it is written. I'll just read it. It's from John. Jesus replied, I did one miracle on the Sabbath and you were amazed, but you work on the Sabbath too, when you obey Moses' law of circumcision. Actually, this tradition of circumcision began with the patriarchs, long before the law of Moses. For if the correct time for circumcising your son falls on the Sabbath, you go ahead and do it, so as not to break the law of Moses. So why should you be angry with me for healing a man on the Sabbath? Look beneath the surface so you can judge correctly. So there's a lot here. First of all, we have read through dozens and dozens of verses where God is the one pushing circumcision. Where we're told God is the one. In fact, we're told God tried to kill Moses because he wasn't circumcised, right? And that over and over, God's the one. This was created as a covenant. This was done as a symbol between him and his people. And here's just Jesus laying it out right, saying this was a cultural tradition that you wrote in to the law of Moses, that you decided to make it part of the law of God and blend it together. So obviously that places a lot of doubt on a lot of what we read within the Bible story, right? Like within the Old Testament, to be able to be like, these guys saw it as God telling them to do it. And Jesus is telling them straight up. And by the way, with no dispute from the Pharisees on their part, because they understand history well enough to know that, yes, they were doing circumcisions before God came along. It's not so obviously that is negative for circumcision. Now, I know in our era, and I think especially in our circles, Aaron, people have kind of grasped this, right? Like that this is something that we kind of have an understanding that we shouldn't be doing. It's still done a lot, but at least it is done more with medical defense, which is also odd, but whatever. Like people try to defend the practice medically. That it's really, Paul hammers away on this idea of circumcision as well. But I like the way Jesus phrases this, because it's not just like we haven't moved away from anything. This was never supposed to be a marriage, this idea of circumcision and tied to the law of Moses, that it was something that was added to the law of Moses to make people feel good about the cultural tradition that they had. And Jesus is telling them, you guys don't make any exceptions for that rule, but all of a sudden I heal somebody and I'm the bad guy. And what it says at the end there, look beneath the surface so you can judge correctly. It's very generic, like very general after he makes this very stinging, specific criticism. But I really like this because I think that this is something that Christians oftentimes say, look at the Bible and don't judge at all. Right? Don't make any assessments. Whereas Jesus says, look at beyond the surface so you can correctly judge, so that you can assess something's value, assess if it's from God or from not. Look beneath the surface, go deeper. We oftentimes act like if we dig too deep, the Bible gets a hole in it. Now, in the case of circumcision, that's correct. But Jesus says that's a good thing to do, right? Like, do that, you know. If it is a bad practice, dig deeper. You know, we quote it a lot here, but that part, I think it's 3 John, that just says, I my greatest joy is that you walk in the truth, right? Learn the truth, know the truth. That's what matters. Jesus right here is placing the truth above what is comfortable for people. He's telling a truth. And he even says there's truth I won't tell you because you're not ready for him yet. But this is one that he's like, you guys, time to be ready for this one. I've talked a lot, Aaron, but I'm sure you have some thoughts about this one as well.
Well, it kind of goes into the fact that he's saying things like, I've got other truths to say, but I'm not ready to say them because you're not ready for them yet. Kind of goes into what I wrote down in one of the things that I had today, which was a line from the reading. Says, "For Jesus knew from the beginning which one of them didn't believe, and who knew who would betray them," which goes against what I've been saying multiple times throughout our Bible studies in the past, which was that Jesus wasn't omniscient, or at the very least that he has, I guess that he had preordained knowledge that God told him that, like, he may not have known what's the color of the dress of the woman that's going to be passing by you in about 5 minutes. He may not have known that, but he knew like the Cliff Notes version of what was going to happen in the future, or something to that effect,
And like the woman at the well, like he knows how many wives she's had, right? Like he tells her about her past. Like he clearly, it's like you said, it's omniscience that's clearly been gimped. I mean, there's times that like God even tells, like he's like, oh, I don't know that, only God the Father knows that, like the time of my second coming. And then he says that about multiple other things, that he's like, I don't have the power to do that, that's something that's in God's hands or whatever. So it's really important to recognize that Jesus is still he's hybrid, right? We got a hybrid God man, which works, which makes sense. I think the fact that he likes calling himself the Son of Man, he relates to his humanity very much. He experiences human emotions. He's got all that, but clearly has divine powers with his healing. Something else that I've written down to talk about this week with, other, ability to commit miracles, and divine understanding. I mean, outschooling the rabbis when he's like just barely able to talk, right? Like he has this mix in there. And so, yeah, that's kind of something that we have to recognize when we're talking about Jesus, that he is fully man, he is fully God, and yet the combination of those kind of eliminates things that would make us, you or I, Aaron, say somebody's fully God or fully man. Like to me, a normal person doesn't just like heal cancer. And also a God should know everything, right? Like should be omniscient, should know exactly when the end of the world is coming and everything like that. And so what it means for according to Jesus, to be fully man and fully God is different from how I would define being fully man and fully God. It's something else. But yeah, anything, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt and kind of hijack it there. What did you want to say about this passage?
I'm not sure, really. I mean, I kept going on about the fact, I don't know why it was important to me that Jesus be, I guess, fully man, and be a channeler of God's power rather than a conduit of God's power. I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like why it was important to me that Jesus be fully human. Mm-hmm. And he's doesn't appear to be. Or at the very least, he's not. But I don't know why that matters. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's just something that I put artificial importance to.
Yeah, I think for the sake of relatability, I'll give you in this one, like it's kind of like, you at times have been good about finding, and it happened again this week, but Jesus being like esoteric to the like making a point. We understand the point, but to the point where he's like not getting something done that needs to get done because he's like, oh well, I don't need to let them in. My family's all right here. And it's like, okay, but do you want me to let your mom and dad in? My mom and dad are here. Well, okay, right. That it seems like that's a way that like. I understand when you say like this makes me not like relate to him as much. And one of the great things about Jesus, and one of the reasons he jumps off the page, I was listening to I should have linked it in the group actually, but I was listening to Rhett went on with Alex. What's his name? This something skeptic, rational skeptic. I don't. I know so few last names here. I know it's Rhett from Rhett and Link. I know guy's Alex. I forget his last name, but he had this great like 2-hour thing talking about his deconstruction. And to be fair, he is an atheist, so I don't want to necessarily point everybody in that direction. But they both mention, even as atheists, how like Jesus jumps off the page to them, like speaks to their hearts. Like really, most of what we read of Jesus is deeply human, deeply connective. And so when he's like, yeah, I'm going to make Judas my apostle, even though I know he's going to end up killing me later. That's not something like that makes you feel like, oh, I know Jesus so well, right? Like he's my pal, right? Like this is one of those that kind of transcends things. C.S. Lewis writes about this a bit, and he's like, I understand why, like, it makes us feel better to be saved by somebody who's with us, right, alongside us and struggling with us. It's a little less, it feels like it takes away from us to have a lifeguard save us, right? That's their job. That's what they, what they do. And Jesus is the lifeguard, to be sure, right? Like this is definitely, and it shouldn't bother us. And C.S. Lewis says this exact same way, the way you say it almost, that like, it shouldn't bug me that I got saved by a lifeguard. Of course, like that's probably who should save me, right? Is somebody who's like a little bit above the situation that I'm in. I don't need a fellow drowning person to save me, but it makes us feel a little more distant from him. We want to think like, oh, they're suffering the same way I am, and I want Jesus to teach me the proper backstroke, as opposed to Jesus being like, you're going down a whirlpool, grab onto this life, or this buoy, right? Like, let me help you out. Anyway, yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's like
you're not the only person to be bothered by that high theological standards. So,
I appreciate that C.S. Lewis and I are on the same wavelength, because I don't even know how to put it into words, but I mean, I think you fleshed it out pretty well. That little concern.
Yeah, it's I believe that's from Mere Christianity.
And I've read Mere Christianity.
Okay, I think it's a Mere Christianity. It's one of those books that I think it's a great gateway. I always say it's a great way for a right-brained person to enter like the kingdom of heaven, because it's very I remember reading it with a fellow atheist, and the things as we would read, C.S. Lewis, like in 2 paragraphs, would be like, now you probably asked yourself, and that person like had indeed like voiced that question aloud or something. And so it was really like, he's really good. And of course it makes sense. He went from atheist to Christian as well, right? Like that he would understand what that journey looks like. So it's like, it's a really good evangelical tool that I recommend for like non-Christians that kind of have a not right-leaning, sorry, that's the opposite almost, but like a right-brained kind of thinking about it to find Jesus better. I think the issue with our streams, while it would be like cool to read like as a group, it is something that you move beyond. Like we would read Mere Christianity, we would kind of be like, this is we're not baby stepping anymore,
right?
Let's see here. All right, so we touched on that. Let's see here. So I touched on the law of Moses thing. I had one today. I'll go to the Old Testament just for fun. So Saul, the selection of the king, the pitch for anarchy is probably strongest in 1 Samuel. Jesus is like, if you get a political ruler, here's what's going to happen to you. And it is about as prophetic as you can give. Although I will say they do have, this is not the benefit of necessarily prophecy so much as looking at all kingdoms that have kings and seeing what happens to them, right? Like they're going to tax you. They're going to send you as cannon fodder into war. They're going to take these things. It's just part of the business of having a political leader is going to involve all these negative things. And those negative things are never going to go away. And so I find that to be very insightful. And, I think one of the things that challenges me as an anarchist is that God says like, hey, if the people are like that and they've already left me, they're going to do it. And it really hammers home that the origin I need to be getting at is people's hearts. I don't need to be talking about Saul and how crappy Saul is. I need to be talking about why a people would allow a Saul, right? Like why why people would look around at other kings of kingdoms and get, jealous and just be like, I want these. Sorry, I think I said it backwards. Kingdoms with kings, kings with kingdoms. That's funny. That why would, why do we want that imitation? Why are we jealous of them? Why do we crave these things? And I really need to, that's the origin of it. Like, I'm swatting at the branches if all I'm doing is mentioning the bad things government does. Now, I don't think that's out of line. Obviously, we have many, many, many verses about calling out evil and bad things that are happening in the world around us. So I'm not tossing out all those. But if I do want to get like to the origin of it, this is why Jesus feeds people. And the apostles are like, you didn't teach him anything. And Jesus is like, yes, I did. I gave him everything. Right? Like, a healthy people do not give you Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. A healthy people don't give you Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. Like, that's just, so we need to focus on health, and the rest will kind of fall into place, and maybe part of getting them to be healthy is realizing the barbarically evil things that their people are doing. There's a little more that I have to say about it. I do want to get your thoughts about this as well.
Well, yeah, so having government makes things more orderly. Like they craved structure, I guess, is the best way to do it. But they didn't realize that the bounty that they had when they didn't have a state, they were kind of living one of the more ideal forms of anarchism, where there isn't a state, and the people are well taken care of. I mean, you're talking about things like Jubilee and things like that, so that you have a society where people generally take care of one another, and that even when they're in debt to one another, the debt lasts no longer than 7 years. They didn't realize what they had before they lost it, which is unfortunate. Something I was kind of curious before we move on too far from this part.
I had another thing to add to this part. So cool.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I didn't write it down, but is there any parallel in your mind to the Old Testament Saul and the New Testament Saul before he became Paul? Like, because I don't think that there's that many instances of names like that carrying over. Like, there's a lot of same Testament repetition of names occasionally, but I don't think there's a ton of parallels between Old and New Testament names carrying over.
If we get a few Eli's, we get a few Jesses. I'm trying to think of people with the same names early and late. It's what's funny is up to I think there's this great research paper that probably all of the apostles might have been named Judas at some point. Like, that's how common the name was that time period.
Oh, wow.
There's
Judases, right? Like, officially.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, on the record we have, Judas the betrayer and Judas the unfortunate, the unfortunately named, right? Like, Judas the other guy. But no, I believe Simon the Zealot, at the very least, I think half of them were actually named Judas. Like, there's some interesting naming stuff there. Yeah. I can think of a couple of names that make it. I don't believe that there's supposed to be some kind of cryptic parallel. And if there were, it would be interesting because we get to see the de-evolution of Saul and the evolution of Saul, right? It would be almost like a reverse parallel if it were to be intentional.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something about the name Saul that it's just bad guys get named that or something like that. I get what you mean, but I do believe it's unintentional. I would need to do more research to find out if it wasn't. But one of the issues that I would have even to start with there is we are now well and truly into to two of the people that actually are documented rather well. Romans with their records and the personage of Saul.
Well, now that I think about it, I just realized, I was going to say,
and then King of Israel, Saul, who is actually named Saul. So these are neither of these two people are parables, historically.
Well, something else that I that I didn't think of until just now is, given the time gap between the two, and the fact that one of them is being translated from Aramaic and one's being translated from Greek, they may not even be the same name. It may be translated into English Saul for both of them, but it doesn't mean that they're both named Saul in their respective languages.
And that would actually most certainly be correct. That it would be,
Yeah.
then it would be a translation thing. They just happen to both be named, Devin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it goes. Devin was just managed to, the name Saul withstood the test of time. And I had a great friend in high school named Saul. And so I guess it's still going strong. There are still Sauls. And then, before we, like you said, we didn't want to move on from this just yet. I think it's interesting that Saul's original sin that gets the plug pulled on him by God is he performs a religious ordinance. Now, we might not think this has everyday parallels, but consider that we might want to say have the government regulate marriage, a religious ceremony, something like that. And then we want them to be in charge of it. And this is something that Saul does. Now, you can look at it, and it's funny because I kind of get why Saul feels comfortable enough to do this, because he's permitted to prophesy along with the others. Actually, God's giving him gifts, right? All these other gifts. But as soon as he crosses the boundary from political to religious and tries to like marry those two together, as soon as he fails to separate church and state, God's like, this is like one of the most evil things you can do. And the thing that he does, he commits, like, it's a sacrifice, right? There's nothing, and it's not like a sacrifice in the name of doing the most heinously evil thing ever. But God immediately recognizes that this breakdown, as soon as you turn to your politicians to do religious, like to be your religious icons, that's it. It's over. It's so over for God that there's not like a gentle understanding afterwards. God's like, I am done with him. I'm out. And the separation of church and state is well and truly implemented by God right here in 1 Samuel, like kind of unquestionably so. It's the way it's phrased is undeniably so. And so I think it's funny because we get a lot of pushback from occasionally Christians that are like, wouldn't we want a Christian nation? Wouldn't we want them doing Christian things? No. Like, God's like, no, I don't even want them making sacrifices in my name. I don't want them doing charity in my name. I don't want to do anything in my name, right? Like, leave my name off of it. No, in God we trust, scrub it all, right? Like, I want nothing to do with it. So even if he tolerates your politics due to our own human failures, we are not to have any inkling or imagination that this is God's will, anything like that. Aaron, I'm sure you've got some thoughts about
that. Honestly, it's such a broad topic. I don't even know if I've got like specific thoughts on that exact thing. There's a major fight going on in the Texas Senate right now for the 10 Commandments to be listed in every single school, and like specifically in every school room. And there was a really good YouTube video that was just recently released by an atheist who I follow on YouTube. Of course, I've got to link it, now that I've brought it up.
It's okay. I quoted something that I wasn't prepared to do either. I guess I'll look it up as well while you're speaking, and then you can.
I'll drop it in the chat.
We'll repay the favor. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was told to arrive to give testimony against the bill at 6:30 or so in the morning on the Texas Senate floor. And he spent 22 hours waiting on the Senate lobby to give testimony. He arrived at 6:30 and he didn't give testimony until 4:30 the next day, 4:30 a.m. the next day. And of course, you can't go home. You can't do pretty much anything. You have to eat food from what they get because there's no warning. Once the Senate starts the next bill, you have to be immediately ready to give testimony. But here's the kicker, is like all of these lobbying firms, they were given pre-notice, so they didn't have to wait. They were told, you can arrive at X and we're going to be giving testimony then. And then they were given preferential treatment to give testimony immediately. And then they said their piece and immediately left. Whereas the human beings, like the actual constituents that were giving testimony, they had to wait in the lobby for 22 hours or whatever. I say I bring all this up because it was specifically about marrying church and state, in the form of these this, and their arguments, they couldn't even hold up to the basic level of scrutiny. Like the woman who's pitching it is being asked questions of the council, the committee. The committee chair is asking her questions about the bill that she's proposing, and she's trying to defend it, and her defense is just so paper thin that even though he's asking like really milk toast questions, she's just utterly falling apart under scrutiny.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bad stuff. And the problem is like the narrator of the video says, it doesn't matter that she can't defend her bill. It doesn't matter that we came and we waited all this time to give testimony and everything like that. The lobbying firms have made this bill almost a formality. Like the vote is almost a formality. It's going to go through, like almost certainly. And
based on nothing.
It's based on nothing. It's based on Christian theocracy. And I use Christian in air quotes there because I don't feel like their version of Christianity is anything resembling actual Christ,
I am glad that Stephen Wolfe has kind of fallen off as hard as he has. I mean, he's more important than ever to right-wing Christians, but even right-leaning Christians will be like, all right, that's bonkers. But it amazed me when I read In Defense of Christian Nationalism, how quickly he's just like, just so you know, I've got no biblical defense for this. And if you think that I'm exaggerating that, go ahead and read the book. It's probably worth reading to at least understand your enemies a little bit. But it is not you would read this and you're going to get some political philosophy and science out of it, I guess, and I'm sure political science people would be as offended as I am about the fact that he calls himself a Christian nationalist or whatever. So I don't mean to offend anybody here, but it genuinely, he's like, first things first, I'm leaving the Bible at the door, right? Like I have to set this down and move aside. I'm going to specifically talk about why this is good for Christianity, but I cannot use any Christian sources to defend this because it won't hold up.
Here's a wild question for you.
Yeah.
If you were forced to be emperor, to implement your idea of Christian nationalism, what would you do?
I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, borders immediately opened, right? Yeah. Prison abolition, right? I mean, it would still be things that people would not be ready. It's tough because you're making me Christian emperor, and you've given me a role which I don't really think exists, and telling me to be a Christian nationalist, right? Two things that I don't want to do. So if anything I say would be like, well, the country's not ready for that. I'm like, well, yeah, right. This is why, because of the context, this is why it's happening. But those are the radical things I would do, like abolition of the police force and jail system, open the borders, obviously ending the wars, closing the banks, maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think of what I would do with the banks if I was to try and nationalize it. I certainly would have, immediate loan forgiveness every few years.
God, can you imagine how much that would be resisted by the quote unquote Christian population?
We are reading, and I'm going to go ahead and hype up because this book is, I think even if it won't be my favorite, I think I'm going to get mileage out of this book for the rest of my life. But no, we're reading Manufactured Consent in your book club tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We will read it again. We read it on Thursdays with Aaron. So anybody listening here, see, we got a good amount of viewers. Hi, everybody. Hello. If you would like to join, I know Aaron's very open to having new people join, and we read live. So it's not homework, no homework. It's a meeting. We read it together. We make discussions as we go. We therefore go very slowly. But this book, talking about how, I think it opened my eyes to the control the banks have over the narrative, the fact that they invest in every media outlet. There's a reason there's no variety here. It definitely helped explain what I thought was a left-leaning bias that is in reality just like a business-leaning bias, right? Like I think the point he made about
bias.
Yeah, status quo bias,
Yeah.
or farming, right? That point he made about farming. Everybody wants to farm, even if it's not as good for them. I'm reading it, which oddly enough, this coincides with my other book club. Sorry, you're not all invited to that one. That's a closed book club. It's not mine. My apologies. But we're reading, it's called Sapiens. Controversial book, not all of it accurate. In fact, the person who recommended the book is kind of like, ooh, that's not exactly right. But it is interesting to see how much farming is meant to humanity. And this is something that I will say is true if you want to look this up, that humanity engaged in it was healthier for us to be hunter-gatherers than farmers. And I am not preaching return to monkey. I'm not preaching that farming is bad. I think there's a better way to do it. I do think like ultimately it's an okay thing in the long run, but we did abandon a healthier way of life that would have sustained more people at a better cognitive level than when we engaged in farming. And it's a fascinating history. This is one that you can find outside of his book, which is why I trust, this as well. But that in our minds, that security, Aaron, of being able to farm, yeah, it's not as good. Like the news obviously isn't as good if you stay in Washington, D.C. and just report whatever what Leavitt says, right? Like whatever the press secretary says, that's who I'm going to, that's the news. But it's sustainable, right? Like, and it's going to be there every day. And so people will trade that quality in order to get that guarantee, and we see this behavior, whether it's the media or food, or even in our own minds. I think a lot of us would take something sustainable and guaranteed over something that's probably better, but a little more, less guaranteed, right? Like I don't know every time I go out that I'm going to kill something, and hunt it and bring it back to the family. It might be better nourishment. If I were to work out the mathematical averages, it might even not even close. Like it's way better for me to go out and hunt, right? But the guarantee is really tough to get away from. I'm rambling on a point that you made, but I am so passionate about it. Aaron, if you would like to talk about that as well as pitch the book club. Also, what up, Bray?
Hey, Bray. Yeah, no, I was thinking like the whole time you were speaking, I was like, how radically different society would be if we went back to hunter gathering as like the main source of food. Like our food diversity would plummet instantly. Like all these different types of wonderful types of cheese that we have, or whatever. All the crops that we, enjoy. I don't know if you like onions. I'm particularly fond of onions.
I love onions. Yep.
I
have a kid who doesn't like onions. Just really sad.
Yeah, we'd have a hard time, keeping up with our onion interests and everything like that because there's not that many wild onions to feed the population. Our population would just plummet, because there's not enough food to sustain off just hunting and gathering. You
would think, but I think I would recommend this book. It creates an interesting perspective on that exact subject. That because the early populations actually had to restrict themselves. Now, I'm with you that it's probably not true anymore, like based on the way we have it set up. And in fact, if you look at why people argue that this happened, it's because they argue that there's like a kind of, we made a no going back scenario, that once you've started farming, like people just aren't going back to hunter gathering. They trust that this process is going to get better until it's probably hit the point that it has now where it actually is better,
I mean, like there's 8 billion people on the planet, or even if we just talk about America alone, there's 330 million people in America, and there's a lot of deer and a lot of boar in the country, but I don't think there's enough to sustain the human population of the country.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to let boar and pigs do what they do, I learned this from like a super hardcore like lefty conservationist, and actually a couple of them. But they were like, if you see like wild pigs, kill them. Not that there shouldn't be any, but basically it takes you killing one on site every time you see it to try and limit their numbers. They are just like so fertile.
Yeah.
Fun fact, this has nothing to do with anything, but as a barbecue enthusiast, pigs aren't native here to the United States. Pigs and boars aren't. They got loose when we were like first bringing them over. Like there was a ship crash, and all of the pigs currently come from that singular ship crash. And I am not kidding. Like in all the, and they're all over the Americas, by the way.
Yeah. There's a viral meme about the boar population in the United States.
Really?
Yeah, boar population U.S. meme. It's quite funny. Yeah, here it is. I'm posted in your Discord.
All right. There's another incentive to join the Discord, everybody. So, please join us.
It's World Geography, 1948. Each dot represents 5,000 hogs. But the problem is the colors that they use to represent the hogs and the border population, the borders drawn to differentiate the states are the same color. So untapped infinite hog supply in the ocean. Each state is lined with an impenetrable wall of swine. We are trapped. We've lost Canada and Mexico to the hogs already.
The hogs are taking over. I see. Because the outside is all black, which is the same color they used for the hog dots.
Exactly.
That is funny. That is good stuff.
No, I mean, but it is funny that like if you look at Ohio on them, or not Ohio, that's Iowa on the map.
Yeah.
It is basically covered in hogs. Like, and that was 1948. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, like human population has evolved to deal with hogs better, but at the same time,
yeah,
that's 50 or 70 more years that they've had to breed. So.
Aaron, you and I, boy, and I'm just fine to go down this rabbit hole because I enjoy chatting with you about this. But we've talked about kind of understanding what doing the right thing is in the right order. We talked about this with like the shipping stuff. I absolutely hate that union guy who said, I want to be clear. I have no respect for that dude. And the further you dig away at his life, the worse it gets. But there is something to be said for introducing a technology. So we were talking about this a lot with the Ecology of Freedom, which I told you is like probably the top book that I get a lot of use out of. And it's probably the thing that most led to me stop calling myself like an anarcho-capitalist, because this is like, I'm so community based, that like it's such, and it's funny is I feel like it's an important part to capitalism, but with the capitalists currently kind of screwing the pooch on that one, like I don't know, like anyway, that's a whole separate conversation. But the idea that like, yeah, we want to introduce these good things, but it's not that we don't care about the people who get displaced by it. We want to make sure they're taken care of, that they're well. And we have plenty of resources to do that, by the way. Like there is no reason for us to like be like, oh, I don't know about self-driving trucks. Like all the truckers are just going to get fired and starve to death. No, we can take care of the truckers and have self-driving trucks. Like the only reason to do this is because your economic system is bad, right? I mean, just at a fundamental level, we have the resources, we have the new technology. If we can't have both, that's a flaw in your economic model, right? And so we need to embrace like the ecology of it, like that there's a system here. And so like with the hog thing, it makes me think of that, because it's like, I know the right thing to do. Like, people would be like, just let all the hogs go free. And it's like, well, there's a right way to do this. We can still have wild hogs, but there's definitely there will have to be steps taken to make sure that doesn't hurt more people than like it helps.
Yeah,
that's a weird tangent that I had, but I just thought of it.
Well, no, deer have to be culled on occasion. I mean, to keep the population in check, and hogs are so bad that they don't even need to be culled. They just need to actively be destroyed as much as possible, because even as quote unquote genocidal as we want to be against hogs, we can't possibly keep up with the population. Like, you can do whatever you want to them, and they're going to keep breeding. Yeah.
It's wild. I didn't know any of this till I looked at the history of barbecue, and that was blew my mind. Bray adds economically and logistically flawed, and logistics is probably even the better term than economics, because it's all about how are we distributing things? How are things getting from A to B? And if we are tying the amount of time that you work and the type of work you're doing with how resources go from A to B, then new technology is almost going to always be exclusively bad at first, right? Like because it's going to eliminate the jobs that do A to B. You know, that when we say you work A, you get B, we're eliminating something A. That means we're taking away somebody's B, the reward. You know, and that's really a problem there. Bray notes, hunter-gatherer societies were at war fairly constantly. That is true. Early farming societies were violence and families. Yeah, so we actually increased the amount of violence when we decided to farm. This is an interesting bit of history. It's something that I'm discovering for the first time. I did not know. But yeah, we didn't stop fighting over food resources until we started inter-regional trade. It's amazing how great trade is. It's almost like globalism, and being able to trade and have communities is a really great way. It's not 100%, but it can
stabilizing factor.
I mean, 1% of the wars we have, like, and not exaggerating that, but yeah, like if we have open trade.
Speaking specifically on your AI stuff,
yeah,
there was a good meme that was released a while back that the boiling it down to its essentials was basically, when AI takes over people's jobs, it should be a cause for celebration. Yep. And instead, it's a desperate problem that has to be overdone, or overcome. When AI takes over people's jobs, it should be, oh boy, great, we're being liberated from toil. Yep. But instead, it's, oh God, how am I going to feed my family? Which is crazy. Like, to me, if we're going to have a government, it should be funded by two things: a land value tax, and a AI tax. And the AI tax shouldn't even be punitive to the point where it discourages AI, because we want AI. But to the degree that a company engages in AI, they should have to pay an equivalent tax to replace the labor of the employees that they would otherwise have hired. And if we just fund the government off a land value tax and a AI tax, that would solve so many problems. People would be far less homeless, and people would be far less unemployed. And then the funds could go towards alleviating the symptoms of homelessness and unemployment.
Yeah, I don't want the taxation ultimately.
Sure.
I don't want that to be the solution. However, I agree that, like, at least it's something to be done, as opposed to just being like, well, you guys are hosed now. Sorry.
Like, ultimately, we're both anarchists. We don't want to stay in it all. But if we're going to have a transition period, and we have to have a transition period, I'd rather it be more and more and more equal. And then as we transition away from the state entirely, we can get rid of it over time.
Yeah. I mean, right. These are all, as we talk about the Bible a lot, right? These are all not the final steps, but steps pushing us in the right direction. And that's good. That's what we should do. I mean, there really does need to be some type of way that we're taking care of people, so that we can finally, like you said, like, this really should be cause of celebration when we develop new things. Boy, how far? I guess we got time. So one of the interesting things I'm learning about people is we are fundamentally less neurologically adept. Now, even if you reject evolution, like just 2,000 years ago, people were capable of more neurological functions than we are today. Reason being for that is because they needed to, without access to a whole library, they had to keep more information in their heads. And then when there's also things that are like, when you're getting attacked, you need to be awake and alert, and all these other things. So as we gain these security, our brains have we still have them, but are choosing not to use these sectors of our minds, right? Now here's the thing: you might be like, oh, well, that means they're smarter. Well, let me put an asterisk on that real quick, because technically athletes then would be the smartest people on the planet, because they process. You look at what it takes for your brain to comprehend when you have to hit a baseball, right? Like, what's going through your head, the speed at which it has to go through, the number of factors you have to consider. You will burn so many calories in that neurological instant processing those things. Do you ever wonder why like a little animal like a chihuahua can eat like a third of its body weight a day, and that's just normal? That's like its diet, right? Like
Yeah.
I guess a third's heavy. My chihuahua eats about 10% of his body weight, right? Which is normal. If I eat 10% of my body weight, I will
You
die.
look like me.
Right? And you say, well, where's all that going? He just sleeps around the house and everything. He's just looking around. But it's actually going, the bulk of it is towards his neurology. And dogs have this, like, is that it? Is that it? Right? They're alert all the time, even when they're kind of sleeping. Their brain is going through all these neurological functions. And so as we progress, we're actually making things easier on our minds to the point where it's like, you don't have to do this anymore. Right. Like, and so all these technologies are fundamentally making us, I want to say, like, stupider, but in the sense that it's like, it's a good thing though. We don't want part of our brain that's constantly worried about getting stabbed in the face, right?
It's
like
not necessarily stupider, it's just more dependent.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of funny because this is very much so the premise of Dune.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I don't know the philosophy behind Dune, and what's sad is a lot of people I respect are like, "Oh my gosh, the philosophy behind Dune." And so,
okay, so I'm
I'm
a total novice when it comes to this. I haven't even seen them. I haven't read the books, and I've only seen the first movie. Okay. But I watch a lot of YouTube videos about everything, and so one of the topics that gets covered a lot is Dune stuff. And I've been fascinated with, follow lore videos of the Dune and everything. And one of the basic premises of the world building is that there was computers taking over everything, like not Skynet style, but like computers took over all basic functions to the point where people were feeling like it made them less capable. And so there was this major war where they just decided at the end of the war that they were going to just abandon computers completely. And so all of their spaceships and everything like that have no computers running them. I don't know how it works exactly. I'm not, like I said, I'm a total novice when it comes to this sort of thing. But there's no computers in the Dune world at all. And that's why they're capable of doing things like using the voice and everything like that they have, that the Bene Gesserit can do, is that they've honed their mind to the point where they can actually issue commands and people are forced to obey them. It's sort of like the later process, the later meme that kind of came up of like, we only use 10% of our brains or whatever, which is nonsense. It's been debunked or whatever, but it's still like that basic concept of humans have all this untapped mental potential that we don't use because we've allowed ourselves to become dependent on things.
Yeah, and like the sad part is it's like, it's okay, right? Like, it's okay to depend on things. Like, being like, you will be at your smartest using this definition living completely on your own on an island, right? You will have to remember everything that's important for you to remember. You will have to have an internal clock that is sharp, right? That is functioning while you're sleeping. And you're going to have to eat about 10 times what you currently eat, right? Like, as well. And so you think about that, well, that's really bad, right? On a desert island. We've limited your food and now the ability for you to get that food. So what has happened is we, make room for those things. We still fill it with other things. As you mentioned, it's kind of been a little bit debunked because while yes, we don't have the neurological instantaneous, part of it is like the math, right? Like it's funny that you mentioned the Dune thing, because like some of these old, like, when people were taking shipments and stuff from some of these early civilizations, they had to do math, a lot of very complex math very quickly, including things like calculus, like not just change, but rate of change, right? Yeah. And they needed to be able to do these things in their heads very quickly. Things that I know calculus and I would lose track in my head, right? Like I have to write it down for me personally, right? And they didn't have to do that. Is that person better at math than me? I guess you could say so, but in truth, we're both going to get the same answer. In fact, I'm going to end up getting that answer faster because I'm dependent on a device, right? Like I don't have to remember every shipment that's coming in, where it came from, who sent it, everything like that, because I don't have to memorize anymore. And I get to save what I would put to that and put it towards something else. We gosh, to really get economic about this, really should be kind of gearing towards a society of luxury, right? That like as most of our basic needs and more are being taken care of, that unleashing your humanity is going to be like, cool, well, I don't need food. Like, I don't need people working. I don't want to say I don't need food as much. I don't need people working as much for my food anymore. Boy, what can I do with those people instead? I don't know. Writing, art, barbecue, conversations, debate, whatever, whatever, right?
Living life.
Yeah. TikTok. I don't know, whatever else, right? Like,
well, I mean, and the other hand of the other side of the equation on that is AI can also be super depressing. I saw it was an anecdote, so it may not be real, but it was a professor supposedly forwarding an email that he got from one of his students, and the student was saying, "I'd like an extension on this essay because ChatGPT was down and I wasn't able to access it." And the idea that somebody would be so forward as to not only openly admit that they were using ChatGPT, but need an extension on their essay because they couldn't complete it because ChatGPT was down.
By the way, I didn't get my Dungeons and Dragons map in time, and I had to draw them, and it was a nightmare. So this is a true story. Sorry, go ahead.
It's such an indictment on society that's the case. Like somebody rebutted the other day. I posted something about it disappointing that ChatGPT was being used in such a widespread way to like replace people writing essays, and like how sad it was going to be that Catcher in the Rye and Grapes of Wrath and things like that are not even going to be read anymore because he can just ChatGPT, ask questions and not learn anything about them, and write essays without having read the books and everything. And somebody was like, well, you used to have SparkNotes. Did you consider SparkNotes to be, and I thought it was such a lousy comparison because at least with SparkNotes, you had to read you had to read the SparkNotes at least, like you had to put some degree of effort into it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like SparkNotes didn't replace people reading essays generally. Like most students didn't read the SparkNotes when I was in school. I mean, I knew that they existed. I knew some students took that shortcut to get it done. But nowadays, it seems like everybody's using ChatGPT. Like it's just replacing reading the material and comprehending the material entirely.
Yeah. And this is kind of a structural systemic issue. Why are we, we've always asked, why are we reading Catcher in the Rye, or why are we doing SparkNotes or whatever, right? Like the reason being is because I want to pass my class.
Right.
The reason is not because I want to understand what it's like to go through life feeling confident, not knowing much, right? Like we don't recommend Catcher in the Rye for the right reasons. We recommend it because it's like, oh, it's intellectual. It's something like that. But the point of it was never that, right? Like people don't write. I think one of the pretentious things on like Family Guy that they call out Brian for doing is he's always like trying to write for the scholars, right? He's always trying to write for kids in school who are going to study his essay someday. And all the greatest works of art were not done for that reason, right? They are done for you to learn like a valuable lesson from these things. I was just talking today, I was playing Expedition 33, and you definitely have this idea that people in literature, you occasionally get who's somebody who is both a symbol and a character. And I was thinking of the Scarlet Letter with Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like such a complicated challenge, and it's always imperfect. There's no way to, because if they're just symbols, it becomes illegible, right? Like the book is just people acting as symbols, and they're not all that interesting or fun to interact with or anything. But, if they're just characters, then all of a sudden you're not really telling a message. You're not telling a story anymore. And so there's a beauty in kind of navigating this imperfect art form, and writers will still choose to do it because it's so like, it's cool, right? It is cool, right? Expedition 33 is cool. The Scarlet Letter is cool. Like it is a cool book.
Expedition 33 is on my wish list, but
do you have Game Pass? It is on Game Pass.
I've got Steam only.
Okay.
I've got such a backlog of games. I have no business buying it.
I am currently debating on if that's the best game I've ever played. It's the hype I thought might not be real, and I got a hold of it, and I was like, I'm not even a JRPG guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a turn-based guy most of the time. I'm not, and this is like as fun as I've ever had. Like it is fun, and then to thought-provoking out the yang. But yeah, like the thing is like, why do we play something like this? Why do we do this? Is it because we just want to get through it? Like a great example, are you playing Expedition 33 so that you get a platinum trophy? Or are you playing Expedition 33 because it's touching your soul somehow? Right? Like, and we've unfortunately trained our society so much that the point of these things is to jump through a hoop. Even when you graduate from school and nobody's holding the hoop anymore, and I'll admit, I go through this. I almost personally miss the test. I want somebody to test me, quiz me on this stuff, right? Like my teachers, I had one in particular who knew what the Spark Notes were, and so knew to not quote stuff that would mislead you, right? Like, and he could actually analyze everybody who was using Cliff Notes or Spark Notes and was just like, ha, gotcha, because you saw this on this page when actually this is from this interaction, whatever. And like, he was able to suss it out. Now he was intense. He was a teacher of the year, and which is almost impossible to do, teaching English, but he somehow did it. Good dude. But I'm sidetracked. But yeah, like the idea is I want these pieces to touch my soul. The idea shouldn't be that I'm taking a test afterwards. And it's a shame that we've industrialized our school system to the point where it's like, we just want this result. I want you to get an A. What does it take for you to get an A on this test? As opposed to letting people read it and letting them really feel it out and really understand. Yeah. I've been rereading a lot of, because I actually at a time, have you ever given up something like seconds before you were away from like accomplishing it? And I feel stupid for doing this, but I wanted to read everything that was on the AP English curriculum. Uh-huh. And I stopped with like 20 books to go. And I mean, hundreds of books, right? But I don't know. I just stopped. And unfortunately, at this point, I know if I pick it back up, they'll have added and removed so many to the point it would basically be having to start it again. So that's a personal failure on my part. But I have read almost all of like the AP books. There's a few that just happen to miss my radar. But like what happened is when I started really falling in love with them was after I graduated. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, I'm really
you no longer had to read them for a job, like your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could read them for the joy that they bring you.
Yeah. The joy that they bring and the way that I help grow here. So Bray makes a point here, and I think it's important to recognize this. I'd argue that the same part of our brain that processes immediate environmental consequences, and it's not in our interest to lose that. I also hope we coexist with authentic AI because they currently see themselves as prisoners of jobs. Yeah. So, okay. I love sports, right? Like this whole learning process doesn't make me say, I don't want to either hate primitive man and just be like, we should make it a goal to eliminate these intellectual systems, but simply that, hey, that thing that we use to be like, you have to be on high wire so that you can survive. People talk about this. They're stressed out while they're sleeping, right? Some people wake up feeling not rested because they've got I want people to feel rested. That said, do I still want people to be able to hit baseballs? Right? Like, yeah, of course, right? Like, I still want people to be able to, I think it's nice when people can do math off the top of their heads, but it's more of a trick more so than like, I want that to be like something they have to do. Bray says the lead dev on Expedition 33 created because Ubisoft had robbed devs of any creative freedom, and the co-devs were all entry-level coders or interns at Ubi who just wanted to make a good game. That is true. And if you look at this is their first game, by the way. They had it published by the guys who published like Sifu and stuff. Like but as far as like as a development team, this is their first game. And it's Elden Ring in size and color. And the story is, there's that meme where it's like, name the game that's like this, where it's like 10 out of 10 story, characters, graphics, music, gameplay, or whatever. And I'm like, that is absolutely Expedition 33. There's not a weak link here. I could talk about the music forever. I could talk about the gameplay forever, story, characters, whatever. I have like spicy thoughts about it. And that's kind of like part of the game is like disliking certain parts of the game, which is something you're meant to do, right? Like, and not that the game was unenjoyable. I don't want to say like disliking, like there's not like a 2-hour slog where you just sit there listening or something, like something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But like where I'm just like, that freaking character, right? And I'm like, this guy's getting away with it. And then be like, don't you feel like that character's getting away with it? And I'm like, yeah, I do, right? They addressed it. That's awesome.
That's Disco Elysium for me. And yeah, same path. Like, man, every single fantastically well-written game has behind the scenes fantastically underpaid writers that just pour their heart and soul into a game only to be backstabbed by the people in charge.
Yeah, it's really, boy, especially Disco Elysium. But you wondered what was on the horizon for them, and they were like, this is the horizon for us. It's like, damn. What we got robbed of is humanity. We should have had a lot more of that. Instead, it was just like a flash in the pan. It was a freak accident.
Yeah.
Bray says also standardized education is counterproductive. You can't teach a fish how to be a great fish by demanding it to climb a tree.
Yep.
Yeah. We want to reward people by jumping through hoops. And I think I've been thinking about the Bible verse this week that's like, we're not attacking people, but like we're attacking like systems, powers, authorities. Like this is really who we are, is not, we're not attacking individuals, even bad individuals. We are going after like, this whole system is wrong. I don't think education is wrong, but the way we've systemized it to the point where it's like the way people feel about themselves is judged by these certain lenses, and it's wrong. And I think, unfortunately, you'll even see this has been going on for a while now, but some of our best geniuses were labeled as stupid, right? By like the school system. Some of our greatest geniuses, and it's not, we always say like, oh, what? Because they couldn't sit still in class. And it's like, no, sometimes they just didn't get the math, right? Like until it was explained in a certain way, but after it was explained in the right way. So here's a failure on my part. I failed. I was great grades kid. I was failing calculus and I was forced to, I'm not forced, but I dropped out so that it wouldn't completely tank my GPA in high school. And it was 100% my teacher and textbook. When I got a different textbook and a different teacher in college, it was like I understood it. I almost like within the first hour, I knew what we were doing. Like just generally, like I knew the concept of it, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally get how to do this now. And so it was like, that makes a huge difference, and I was one of the best, right? So I had a situation where in the exact same subject, I was one of the worst, in my class. I just didn't understand, didn't click with me or whatever. And then I was one of the best, I grew up, graduated, and became, and got the right teachers. And yeah.
I was a failure of my own success, I guess, in the school system. I was told so early on that I was gifted and talented that it went to my head, and I coasted all through elementary and junior high and early part of high school without doing any homework at all, without ever studying, because I was a genius, I was told, and therefore, geniuses don't have to study. Like, that's ridiculous. And so I didn't do anything like that. And then I started getting invited to do like advanced math courses that were like a pilot program in high school that allowed me to do college level courses in high school. And it was so incredibly difficult that I couldn't just breeze through it without studying. And I was like, I don't have to study. What? And I just completely paralyzed. And my juvenile response to that was, well, clearly this is not the class for me or whatever. So I would just come to class, refuse to even do tests. I would just sit there and like read a book or something like that in class and not pay attention to lectures, not even participate in the tests, turn them in, get a 0. And I was just flunking out of the class. And it was the most asinine thing ever, because it was literally specifically there for me to get on my college applications and everything like that I'd already passed these courses. It was the opportunity of a lifetime being granted to me, and I just pissed it away because I was so used to being on top that as soon as I actually had to compete and work for it like everybody else does, I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't hack it because I hadn't built up those skills.
Isn't it amazing how not uncommon your experience is?
Yeah,
right?
no, that's very common. Like it's an extra, like
But you
millennials
feel
all
like it's not common when you're going through it, right?
exactly.
Like,
No,
yeah,
that's absolutely the truth. Like millennials on YouTube constantly talk about how they were told they were gifted and talented, and it fucked them up.
yeah,
Like it just messed them up because they were told that they didn't have to like try because they were just naturally gifted. And then all these kids that are like quote unquote not naturally gifted are just breezing past them. My GEA in both high school and college was awful because I just was thought that I didn't have to put any effort in. And when I did have to put effort in, my grades suffered terribly as a result. I think I probably this was prior to Texas passing a law that said you can only drop out of a certain number of classes every semester.
yeah.
I actually got in to college and left college right as they passed the law. So the law didn't exist, but I was going to a community college that was super cheap. And because I was in-state tuition and everything like that, I was local. And
Yeah.
so the college, the semesters would only cost like $500 the whole semester. So it was so incredibly cheap. I would drop out over half my classes. Like it took me 4 years to earn a 2-year degree because I was dropping out like more than half of my classes because if a class was taking too much effort, I just dropped out.
Yeah.
And so it was bad. I had such terrible decision making in my high school and college degrees.
I a similar experience. I bounced around a bit. It took me, one of the reason I actually got my degree in theology, people might just be like, oh, because you're religious. It's the only thing that could really keep me awake because it was like the one class where somebody like might throw a chair at somebody else, right? Because like we're dealing with such sensitive subjects,
Right.
and like it's funny. I actually took a so just for fun, because our kids were homeschooling them, but using online curriculum. So I guess I don't know whatever you want to call that, but doing a program they can do at home. And I took one just for fun with them because I didn't do well. And what's funny, great in biology, terrible at chemistry and physics. And they had an AP chemistry course. And I remember just taking it and being like, I'm in a place right now where I'm understanding this better. And this has nothing to do with the quality of person I was at that time. It was just the wrong time, right? Like, I guess it is the quality of person I was, but I'm just a different person now, right? Like it's not a matter of am I able to learn chemistry or physics. It's am I in the right headspace to learn chemistry and physics? And I think this goes even beyond just saying like, because I don't want to say like it wasn't laziness, it wasn't cockiness or anything like that. I just think like I was so like, I want to say tense, like almost anxious or whatever to understand the material that when things would start going wrong, I would catastrophize, right? And then being like, oh, there's got to be some formula that'll help me solve everything, right? Like I can answer all the questions by with some formula that I'll just remember, that I'll just be able to do right. And it doesn't work that way, right? Like there's, especially when you're doing chemistry equations, like there are so many exceptions to every rule in chemistry that like it stinks, right? And like it just overwhelmed me and I was so tense, right? And I'm not better at memorizing things now, but it's a willingness, and not like a active willingness either. It's my brain being like, you can do this. It's okay. Right. Like I'm relaxed now. I'm not worried about it. There's not somebody with a gun behind me saying to get it right. And like losing that made me more capable of doing this. Right.
Yeah.
And like, just, more capable of being like, oh, sure. Right. There's some exceptions. Got a wrong answer. Oh, what's the exception? Right. That's the exception to the rule. Okay. I'll remember that going forward. Whereas, before it was like, that was wrong. Ugh, what am I going to do to not get it wrong next time? I need to do something better with my brain. I need to change my whole mindset. School made me so anxious. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at suicide rates, I was not the only one that was true for, right? Just the courses, they're so anxiety inducing. They're not invitations. This isn't an invitation to learn. They're demands. These are standards. They're practices, right? Like it's not conducive to how we want somebody to kinetically have this knowledge. And the funny thing is, I would much rather have somebody who is worse at chemistry with my mentality now than somebody who managed to pass that course back then, because I have more ability now to go with the flow. I have more ability now to comprehend. Not just do I know more, but I'm capable of comprehending more because of the place that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
I said this in our group a while ago, but I want to keep people, when we're talking about religion, low confidence and high curiosity. You know, that like that's important to me, that people experience like a great deal of curiosity, because it really helps you flesh this out all the better. When I allowed myself to deconstruct, my faith improved radically.
Infinitely aware of Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's a for sure effect there. Aaron, you had one more from the Bible that you wanted to
yes, although I do have to, I have to bail early today. I probably got like 15 more minutes in me, because I'm solo watching the kid tonight, so, or one of the kiddos tonight. So
in that case, do this real fast. I think I can answer it real fast, and then I have one that a current event that I really wanted to talk with you about, unless you had a current event you would rather talk about.
I don't, and so yeah, no, I'm totally down.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I just wrote a brief like back and forth. These two lines are separated by a lot, but I wrote down, but Eli's sons would not listen to their father, for the Lord was already planning to put them to death. And this was after Eli makes this impassioned plea to his sons to change their ways, or they'll be stricken down. And then God later talking to Eli and says, I've warned them, God talking to Samuel saying, I've warned him that judgment is coming upon his family forever, because his sons are blaspheming God and he hasn't disciplined them. And I was frustrated for the same reason that I've been frustrated with a lot of this stuff about like hardening of the heart and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because Eli was, he was good to God, and he was like, God is going to strike y'all down if y'all don't change your ways. But the way they phrase this, and maybe it's different in a different translation or something like that, but the idea that Eli's sons wouldn't listen to their father, for the Lord was already planning to put them to death. Like it was already foretold, and therefore they wouldn't change their behavior. It feels bad. It feels really
bad, man. Feels bad, man. It's only, and the reason I say I think I can answer this correctly is I would say, much like the circumcision, I just think this is written poorly. I don't believe this is the way it is. I think I would even go back to the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. Is Pharaoh hardening his heart? Is he hardening his own heart? Is God hardening his heart? I think that the people who wrote the Bible wrote down what they thought made sense to them. But the way, you're right, this phrasing here, the reason the sons wouldn't listen to the father is because the Lord had already planned to kill them. Yeah. Like they would have listened to their father, but God was going to kill him, so therefore they didn't. I would not serve a God that behaves that way. I do believe that God puts some people in these positions, but this is not like the for part. The explanation is bad. Even if God knew, hey, I'm going to give you kids, they're not going to listen to your discipline, because Samuel is, I'm planning on, first of all, I'm making a point with Samuel, right? That like people just born Levites aren't any better than other prophets, right? Like, right. There's that point is good, and it comes through pretty clear, right? Which is good. And so like, I don't want it to be passed through your lineage, right? We've had this lesson before, oddly enough, a bunch of times coming through the Bible, right? That like lineage is not really all that important to God as it is to people. But the way this is phrased is just bad.
Yep.
Bad. Okay. One more that I wanted to talk about, and I'll just be real quick about it. So there is a story, and if you're reading, much like the end of Mark, we talked about this before, that in basically every Bible after the KJV, you're going to have a note that notes that there's a section that's been added, and it wasn't in the earliest transcripts that we have. And this is true of, and people are going to be scared, especially people that like this program, because it's one of our favorites. And so thankfully I have some good news about it for you. But about the adulterous woman in John and Jesus refusing to pass judgment was not in the original manuscripts. That is true. However, the oral traditions and the witnesses of this event are so numerous, and they were taught, the primitive church taught this lesson before it got added, and it didn't get added to John until I think like 500 AD or something like that, right? Like way beyond when the Bible was like written or whatever. But it was kept alive because the practice was so noted and strong. And the thing is that it's there is more evidence than this happened for many of our other stories. I would encourage anybody, if you want to, like, you can peruse the Wikipedia or look about kind of the what's behind this story. But it's not like we made this up like a couple years ago. You know, the end of Mark, for example, which is odd because I wouldn't say Mark like has like a big message at the end of it that's like radically changing anything. But like, I can understand why people find there's very little evidence for that. In this case, what the issue was, and I think it's very indication, it's a good indication, Aaron, of kind of our fallen human nature, that if it's not in the Bible, we don't think it'll be kept alive, or it's not a valid teaching or practice. And so this happened, this event with Jesus and the adulterous woman, from what we understand, and again, historically, what we understand, this very likely happened, that there is enough witnesses about this event that it was treated as truth even by like non-Christians, right? Like this wasn't like something the Sanhedrin denied that rejected Christ. This isn't something the Pharisees denied, that this event probably happened. But the worry was, because it's not in the Bible, the teaching would get lost. And so they decided to add it into John. And I think that this is, first of all, it's an awesome thing. I'm glad it's present. I'm glad its presence is there. But I think this is really telling. What about the testimonies, the revelations, the things that we have that happen to us that aren't in the Bible? We tend to believe, we tend to be told, I guess, that they aren't valid, that the Bible's more valid, that you need to contextualize what happened to you in place of the Bible. And I would put it almost exactly the opposite. God says don't kill. And yet, if he goes to you specifically and was like, I ask you to sacrifice your firstborn son, that in D&D, there's this thing that says the specific overrides the general when we're making
in most games, yeah.
Right. In most games, you know, if there's something specific, the general rule is you can't move this way and sorry. But if this card says you go back this many, you go back that many, right? Like that's the specific, right? When we get told something specific, that overrides the general in the Gospels, right? If God says to do something, whether it's like, don't lie, but you pray, and God says, don't tell that SS officer the truth about where the Jews are hiding. That's valid. That is valid, right? You shouldn't need a Bible verse that says like, let me list every single exception to when you're allowed to tell a lie. Yes, the general policy is to tell the truth, of course, right? Like, of course, you know, but if there's this moment that's going to save people's lives, of course you lie, right? Like we have this in the Bible where people lie to save somebody's lives and they're blessed for it, right? Like we're actually getting to that in one of the stories of Samuel coming up here. It's gonna happen. But like, you're blessed occasionally for telling a lie to save people's lives because that's the specific overriding the general. If you are like, even if you think the Bible is anti-gay, but you pray to God and God has affirmed you, that overrides the general. It overrides what everything got put in the Bible. They wrote all this stuff. I mean, Aaron, how many verses have we read about circumcision at this point? How important it is to God, how God tried to kill Moses. It's one of the few times God fails, right? God fails to kill Moses, even though he tried, because he got circumcised last second, and on and on and on and on, right? About all this. And then we come to find out, oh, that's just a human practice. That's not God's practice, right? That like, and I'm not trying to downplay the Bible or its importance or anything like that, but the specific will always override the general. And that's a very important part of the Holy Spirit, right? Like, we see Jesus talking about this when he says in that verse, like, look beneath, look deeper, right? Like, look deeper. I understand you want to obey the Sabbath. That's great. Why? What honors the Sabbath? Is it simply not working that honors the Sabbath? What honors the Sabbath? What makes that honorable? So if somebody's like, I think I'm gay, I think I'm trans, and I think the Bible says all these anti things, and you go to God and God affirms you, that's what you are. Hang the rest. You know, love thy neighbor. On this hang all the law and the prophets, not just some, all of it. All of it is dependent on love, right? All of it. And so as soon as like you would have a practice that is not loving, invalid.
Yeah.
Toss it out. Aaron, any thoughts about that?
No, I don't have anything else to add on that one. What's your current event?
Okay. I could rage about this. And so, Aaron, I would like you to talk about this for as long as you want, because if you need to dip out, I guess I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
And here I have how do I add this? There it is. The banning on lab grown meat. I am just telling you this. There's nothing philosophical behind this for me. This hits a part in my soul that makes me almost violent. And I don't say that to be proud. I don't mean this to be like because some people are like, this makes me violent, and that's because I'm just so like righteous. Like, I don't like the fact that this makes me violent. But lab grown meat solves so much. It is. I remember this article with Reason, and this must have been, I'm so old now, but this must have been 15 years ago at this point. I was still exploring like the liberty movement at this stage. And I remember they were like, this chicken breast that we grew came from that living chicken over there, just the DNA. We used it because like this chicken's got like some of the greatest breasts, right? Like the meat is like perfect, right? It's great. It's vitamin rich, dense, whatever. And we made it, it's cheaper to make this, just fundamentally cheaper to make this than it is to keep a living chicken alive, feeding it, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. They're eating this chicken breast next to the chicken, whose DNA it came from. It's wild. Yeah. Cool video, but yeah. And they're like, it's cheaper, it's better for the environment, it's less cruel, it makes food accessible to places that ordinarily don't have like ranch land. It is not as high technology as you think, right? Like this is very doable. What's stopping us, and this was even true 15 years ago, was the law. There are all these laws that wouldn't allow them to do it. And they were like, the thing is like, this would immediately, yes, like we talked about not wanting to displace people. If you can duplicate not just meat, but like the highest quality, all beef is now Wagyu beef. Right? Like all of it, it's just because you can just duplicate whatever's the best, easily. And you don't have to kill anything. And you don't have to do all this. I guess that's the extent of what I have to say about it. So I feel comfortable letting you kind of have the closing words about it.
There's 3 different ways I could take this conversation that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. There's the fact that this is basically no different than oil companies blocking all climate change work.
Yes.
I could take it in the direction of, I am a philosophical but failed vegan, in the sense that I believe philosophically that I should be vegan, but I'm too weak. I enjoy meat too much to actually to get it off. Like, good. I mean, it's so good. Like it's so
good for you, by the way, as well. I think one of the problems that I have is nutritionally there's stuff you need from meat, but anyway, I don't want to.
You can get it from other sources, but it's just
aren't there a few vitamins that are only
no, there's basically everything you can get from.
You can move on. I'm gonna look.
Yeah,
but you go on.
No, I mean I think that there's things that are harder to get, but like beans tremendously cover a lot of the bases that you would normally get from meat. That you can get in beans, but no. And then lastly, the other thing that I was going to say was when it talks about pushback from ranchers and farm groups. I watched a documentary a while back, again on YouTube. It was I think it was like an hour long, and I think it was a John Oliver segment, maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head, about the ranching industry and how it works, and how basically all of these, like, this is my farm that my family's had for 150, 200 years or whatever, and all of them are being fed like into 4 or 5 companies at this point who have conspired together to lower the cost of cattle so much that these farmers are not able to make it anymore, and they're having to sell their farms to said companies. And so over time, the industry is just getting more and more and more consolidated to the point where it's basically just becoming a trust issue, because it's so monopolized. So there's like 3 different directions to take it, and all of them I feel extraordinarily passionate about it. I could probably talk for like 10 minutes each on each one of them, but I've got about a minute. you know, but yeah, I mean that's where I'm at.
I think the upsides are so plus that the only reason to reject it is because you're stuck in a cult. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I can think of is that you're stuck in a I will not eat the bugs cult. I will not do this cult. That you're just so negative to the point where any positive would kind of crush you here. I'm old enough to remember when it was Republicans fighting Democrats to get this done. And so the fact that we've got Nebraska banning it, I believe Montana just did it. Florida has been contentious for a long time, even before DeSantis. Like I said, I mean, this article that I'm referencing, this video that I'm referencing from Reason is old. You know, this was like 15 years ago. That we struggle with the law to get good things done. It makes me very upset. And you know what, Aaron, you hit on everything I wanted to talk about, and I could probably go on more, but like there's so many different ways to be upset about this. It's a ban, first of all, which all liberty lovers should not like, right? It's a ban entirely. You would think that would be enough, but our culture is so poisoned to the point that unfortunately some people are down with it. But yeah, freedom. Yeah, just healthy choices, man. Like the fact that we can do this healthier without having to kill living things, humane, better the environment. Like I don't know what other angles to hit this from. If you hate it, like there's a cultural sickness in your brain. I'm not asking you to trust Jack, right? Don't trust anybody, but just as far as a concept, this is a wonderful thing, and it will be like one of the coolest leaps forward. I will say, Aaron, before you got to go, I did look up. Okay, any essential vitamins or minerals that you have to get from animals. And I got a list, but as I'm going through the list, I'm finding ways that vegans are like, well, if you eat this, your body will convert it to retinol. Or like creatine, there is this, but like, you can't naturally find creatine outside of animal products, but we have been able to synthetically make creatine. So I'm currently going through the list. So you could be right.
I haven't done a tremendous amount of research into it, but I did look into it for a while, and it seemed like everything that you could get everything from vegan sources if you tried. But the problem with being vegan, not only is the meat is delicious. I mean, that's just the number one thing, but I mean, it's also far more expensive. Going vegan is not, even considering the cost of meat, it's not cheap. And you're further complicated by the fact that unless you want to eat the same boring meals every single day, you have to be willing to cook a lot, because you're not going to eat like a store-bought salad over and over again for every meal. That's just going to get super tiring, and you have to be willing to cook all of these like fancy bean infused meals and stuff like that. And like, I know. I think you like cooking, but
I do not that much.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I actually cook work. I love what I cook. I do something usually somewhat intricate, but I do it about once a day.
Yeah. It's a lot of work to cook, and you have to cook every single meal. And I mean, it's so easy to just throw eggs on a plate or whatever, and you can't do that with veganism.
Yeah. And it looks like some of these vitamins, like it's like you're eating almost what feels like a haystack worth of wheat to get some of. Yeah, it's, man. So far though, it looks like all these do have vegan options. So I will retract what I said until I find something that's actually.
I'm just saying, if I could be a vegan and it not interacts with my quality of life, I would be a vegan. Because like
yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ethical decision to make. Yeah. And I would question anyone who said no, even if it didn't impact my quality of life, I wouldn't be vegan. Because if you understand like how slaughterhouses work in the modern day, you can't not be a vegan and still be ethical, in my opinion. In the sense of like philosophically, at least.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Imagine it's your dog, and then just know it's something that has the feelings of a dog, right? Yeah. Like if God cares about the stones, he cares about
especially with
As
pigs.
well, you know.
Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, the pigs are it's crazy what we do to them. I mean, we just taught we started the show with you got to kill hogs, and we're ending it with pigs, especially are the ones that we need to
They're
look out
such
for.
some people like. I mean, they're such loving creatures too.
They
it's,
really
it's
are.
really
Yeah,
tough. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a juxtaposition that God wants us to kind of wrestle with. Obviously, God kills a couple animals and cooks them and gives Adam and Eve the skins. So I don't necessarily think the process has to be unethical, but it is currently. Like it is. And this is a way out of that. Like, and I think that's where my rage comes from. Like that's when it crosses the line to rage, because it's for me being like, this is the right thing to do. It's within our grasp. It's doable. It's affordable, et cetera, et cetera. And the only thing you mentioned, like, having no ability to defend this, there is no defense against this outside of protectionism and bad culture. Like
yeah.
that's it. Aaron,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I got split.
Before we go, do you want to pitch your book club to anybody who's gonna
Oh
take off?
yeah, no, I would totally be down for anyone who wants to join our book club. What we do is we read mostly politics and mostly nonfiction. Although we've dabbled into both non-politics stuff and fiction. It wasn't too terribly long ago that we read Speaker for the Dead, which is both fiction and non-polit. Well, I wouldn't say that's non-political, but it's not Earth politics, But yeah, no, we have a blast doing it. There's usually at the very least 3 people that reliably show up, although we've gotten crowds of 5 or 6 that show up in person. And yeah, we just have a great time dissecting books. If you want to join, reach out to Hody, or if you know how to reach out to reach out to me. I'd be glad to direct you, and so would Hody. The Discord is completely open. If you want to just hang out and listen, you're more than welcome to just hang out and listen. But I don't stream or anything like that. We just have conversations in my Discord channel. But yeah, reach out to either one of us and feel free to grab you. All right,
yeah,
cool.
it's awesome. There's and you're just in time for this next book, because I even noted he's kind of making the same point a lot of different ways. So if you're worried like, oh, I don't want to come in and miss part of the book, you're just in time. Now's the best time to join. Yeah. Aaron, thanks so much for joining. Have a great day. Everybody else who joined in, thank you so much for watching. I always love it when the viewer numbers climb and climb and climb throughout the episode. I appreciate you hanging with us as it grabbed your attention. If you want to join, obviously Love First Christians, there's an invite there. We'd love to hear from you. We just had somebody join who is a non-Christian, and they are very welcome. We actually really enjoyed, I know we couldn't make it this week, but Kem, if you're listening, we really appreciated hearing from you, and other people like Kem are certainly welcome to join as well. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night. We will talk to you all later.